here's a bottle of wine. Might sound stupid, but do you know how to open a bottle of wine? First of all, you need a decent corkscrew, and here is what I think is a decent corkscrew. It's called a waiter's friend, and if you notice here, it's got 2 little levers as opposed to 1. So that's what makes it good, but I'll show you that in a second. Then when you have your bottle of wine here, this is called the foil. Now, if anybody wants to make a comment, maybe you'd like to make a comment in the comment section. If you're going to cut it with the knife, do you cut it along the top here, or do you cut it under here? Because when we've asked this question in classes a lot, people give us lots of different answers. So if you want to stick a comment in, whether you put it at the very top or under the neck, far away, because there is a right and a wrong answer. And the right answer is that it actually should go under here. That's what the little ridge is for. So basically, if you were to take it off from the top like this, what can happen is you can get little bits of foil, if you can see it up there, that come off the top. And strangely enough, this little foil can attract aromas if you store the wine wrong. And if you pour the wine over this foil, it'll actually impart a really weird taste. So the whole reason why they have this little notch underneath the bottle of wine is that you can get your corkscrew underneath. And pop it off, so it just has a nice little neck as opposed to cutting it near the top. Okay, next thing when you open a bottle of wine is you need a corkscrew with a little pig's tail like this. Okay, so if you can see down the middle, there is a gap right down the middle. So it's not basically a screw with a coil around here. It looks like that there, and the reason for that is there's less surface area, and if there's less surface area, it's not going to grind up the cork. So you might have opened a bottle of wine before where you've opened it and the cork goes to shreds. That's not a good thing. So to prevent that, you need like a little pig's tail shape, just like that there. So stick it in the middle, give it a twist, and then use the first little lever to open the first half of the cork, and the second one to open the second, and it's dead easy. So you don't need to be kind of doing all this kind of malarkey and breaking your teeth. One of these is the perfect job, okay? So we've got a few comments. White wine, Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, cool. So we're going to have a red and a white, and we're going to guide you through tasting them. Hope everyone's got a glass of wine in front of them. So what we'll do is we will start with the white wine. So in order to tell whether wine's good or not, we start off by looking at the wine. So with the white wine, what happens is whenever it's young, it's very, very light. And as it ages, it gets darker and darker. So with this wine here, you can see it's actually very, very light, which means it's young wine. And just to demonstrate the point, as the wine gets older, air gets in through the foil, through the cork and into the wine, and makes it darker and darker. So if this is a young wine here, this is a very old wine. So you can see the difference in color already. So this wine here is 2008, and this wine here is 2018. So you can see what 10 years does to a bottle of wine. So that's the first thing. So you can tell the age of a wine. For people out there who are drinking red wine, if you're drinking red wine, give us a thumbs up. If you're drinking red wine goes the opposite way. So red wine starts off really, really dark, and as it ages, it gets lighter and lighter, but it gets lighter and lighter from the edge of the glass inwards. So here's another little interactive thing. If you're holding a glass of red wine at the minute, what I'd like you to do is hold it at around about 45 degrees. Not anymore, otherwise you'll have a wet lap, but hold it about 45 degrees. And then basically look at the far end of the glass. And if you're looking across the glass at the far edge of the wine, you'll see like the color doesn't run all the way to the edge. It kind of runs to the edge, and then there's about a millimeter or two of kind of wateriness, like a pink tinge. Does anyone see that on the red wine? If you look across the far side of the glass, you'll see that the color doesn't run all the way to the edge. And basically for a red wine, for every millimeter of wateriness where the color doesn't go around to the edge, that basically represents a year in the life of the wine. So you can actually age a red wine just by looking at it. So basically the more the color pulls in from the outside, the older the wine. So that's an interesting thing to note about wine. So basically that's the thing to see how old a wine is. Next thing then, a lot of people, what you want to identify with a wine is, with a white wine, is it bright, is it clear? So if you can see through the glass, that's pretty good, it's clear. And also it should be nice and bright, so the light should be dancing around it. So this is obviously a good start. One thing people say a lot is, what about the legs of a wine? I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the legs or tears of a wine. And what they are is, if you give it a wee swirl, again, if you have a glass of wine in your hand, give it a swirl. And I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but you might see little tears coming down the side. Live TV, eh? So if you give it a swirl, and you might see little tears coming down. So you can see there little tears streaking down. Now that was originally meant to be, by a lot of people's standards, the quality of a good wine. It should have tears that run down the side, like little kind of teardrops running down the side. Now that actually isn't true. So little tears that run down can represent one of three things, okay? So if you've ever wondered what they are, the first thing it can mean is that it's a wine that's full-bodied. Now that's a question we get quite a lot, as to what does full-bodied mean in terms of a wine. But full body means basically a couple of things. It's a combination of how the mouthfeel of the wine is, so the texture of the wine, and the second thing body means is the intensity of the flavour. So if you can imagine on a scale from left to right, right to left, water on one side and double cream on the other, the water side is going to be light-bodied and the double cream is going to be full-bodied. And then also in terms of intensity of flavour, if you think of water on one side and water with half a bottle of My Wadi put into it, that's again light-bodied to full-bodied. So if anyone ever talks to you about wine and you're wondering what this body thing means, it's just a combination of the texture of the wine and also the intensity of the flavour. So these little tears that run down can indicate that the wine's full-bodied, but that in and of itself isn't necessarily a good sign of quality. So again, the tears don't matter that much. It can also mean that there's a high alcohol content in the wine, which to most people means it's not necessarily a good thing, but for certain people it is a good thing. And finally, it can mean that there's good quality fruit in the grapes that make up the wine. So if you're ever out at a meal and someone says, oh, there's legs in the wine, it's a good thing, just laugh into your shoulder and realize they're talking rubbish. So that's looking at the wine. So basically, to summarize, white wines start off light and go darker as they age. Ta-da. And red wines start off very, very dark, and as they age, they get lighter and the colour pulls from the outside of the glass into the middle. So that's the first thing we're covering, is looking at the wine. The next thing is one of the most important things that we don't do in terms of wine, and that's smelling the wine. So I don't know if you guys are sitting down on Friday night, whenever you opened up a bottle of wine, the first thing you didn't do was go and sniff the wine. The first thing you did was you poured the wine and you just went down the hatch. But it's really important to basically smell a wine before you begin, because I don't know if you realize, but your tongue is pretty rubbish at picking up flavors. So your tongue can pick up sweet, sour, salty, and bitter, and that's not particularly good at identifying flavors. Flavors from wine actually come from the evaporation of wine at the back of your throat, up into your nasal passage, and that's where the flavors are picked up. So if you just go straight down the hatch as soon as you get the wine, which we all tend to do, that's going to basically give you just the sort of broad flavors, but it's not going to give you like all the total flavors of the wine. It's just like whenever you have the cold, your nose is blocked, and if your nose is blocked, you're not going to pick up like all, any flavors. Your tongue's rubbish. So what you want to do as soon as you get a wine is basically, well, take a big slug just to get your first hit. But if you want to really appreciate the flavors of the wine, what you need to do is give it a swirl in the glass. And by swirling it in the glass, close up, the air molecules are bombarding the wine. And as the air molecules bombard the wine, it opens up the aromas. And the aromas will then basically start getting into the middle of the glass, and that's why this glass is tulip shaped. It's to hold in the evaporated aromas. So if you've got those nice aromas, you might as well stick your nose in. And if I can stick my big nose in, so can you. So get your nose in there, and that actually starts to get the flavors going. So as soon as you start getting the flavors going, then you're going to taste the wine a little bit better than if you just sort of started welling it into yourself. So the main thing really with smell is not worry what smells you're getting, because you see these wine experts rhyming off, you know, kumquat and lychee, goji berries, and hot flip-flops on a sunny beach. But I mean, we don't really pick up those flavors because we're raised on oranges and bananas and white bread. So we're not going to pick up, you know, all these fancy descriptors that all these experts are trying to get us to pick up. So the most important thing is, one, smell your wine, and the second thing is ask yourself, do you like the smell? Because if you like the smell, you probably like the taste. If you don't like the smell, you probably won't like the taste. So so the main thing is there, get your old schnauzer in there, give it a smell, and you'll get things going. But as I say, don't worry about all these different fancy things the experts are telling you. Just basically see, one, smell it, and two, do you like the smell? And we'll move on from there. So that's smell. Now this is the next bit. Now this is the bit where I need you guys to be interactive at home. And if you do this and take any photos, I would love you to either post them on the Rush Fitness page or stick it on the Counter Deli's homepage. And this is where we're going to be starting to slurp the wine, okay? Because it's really important, as I'll tell you in a second, that you get the wine into all those different areas of your mouth, okay? Have you ever seen experts doing this here? Because that's what we're going to do now, okay? Now the reason we're going to do that is not to make an idiot of ourselves and for Emmett to laugh at us all. It's basically to assess the quality of the wine. So basically, whenever a winemaker is making wine, the only way that you can assess them is by having criteria upon which to assess their wine or their produce. And wine is basically, wine is assessed based on its balance and also the length of time the flavor stays in your mouth. So I don't know if you've ever watched these wine programs where you see these experts on and they say, oh, it's a fantastic wine, it's well balanced. So it's important that we know, and that's what I'm going to teach you now, is what well balanced means. So in terms of balance, wine has three things and three component parts, and it's important to know what they are. So the first one in a wine is fruit, and fruit aspect of the wine is picked up at the tip of your tongue, right at the front. So if you ever taste things like lemon and lime and an apricot, that's going to be picked up at the tip of your tongue. The next component of a wine is acidity, and that's that crisp, sort of sharp taste. If you can imagine someone squeezing a lemon or lime into your mouth, it's picked up at the side of your mouth or your tongue, and it's very fresh and kind of refreshing. So you need that in a wine, because if you don't have acidity, it's very flat. And the final element of a wine is the alcohol, and that's picked up at the back of your throat, and that, if anyone's drank whiskey before, the sensation you get from that is heat and a burning sensation. So if a winemaker does his job well, he'll balance those three elements really, really well. He'll have the fruit at the front, the acidity at the side of your tongue, and the alcohol all at the same level. So if you remember those old stereo graphic equalizers, you remember all those things up and down, what he's trying to do is pitch the fruit, the acidity, and the alcohol all at the same level so that nothing takes over. So if you drink it, it just goes down really, really smooth. So that's what balance means. So whether you know it or not, you probably assess the balance of a wine when you're drinking wine, because you might have been at a posh restaurant and someone splashed out and you drank a glass of wine and you go, geez, that was lovely. And you don't know why it was lovely, except for saying that it went down really easily. So the reason why it went down easily is because the fruit, the acidity, and the alcohol were all on the right level, and they just coated your mouth and went down really well. So what we're going to do now, and hopefully you've got a glass of wine at home, is to practice this, okay? So before you do that, what you want you to do is just take your glass and just take a drink and tell me what you all think of it. If you're there, just put it in the comments. Okay, so what we're going to do now, that's just tasting the wine. What we're going to do is assess the wine and the balance of the wine between that fruit, acidity, and alcohol. So what I want you to do is take your glass. I want you to put a good half mouthful in your mouth, and then I want you to give it the Listerine treatment. So what I was telling you is to get the wine into all those areas of your mouth so that you can get the fruit at the front, the acidity at the sides, and the alcohol at the back. And then what I want you to do is swirl it around for about 20 seconds. And whilst you're doing it, I want you to inward whistle, okay? I don't know if you're at home with your glass of wine, but can you inward whistle? And if you can't do that, what it's basically saying to do is slurp. So if you can imagine slurping soup, so we all know how to slurp soup, but what we're going to do is slurp wine. And the reason why we're slurping and is to bring in air into the wine whilst you're sort of swirling it around, because the air, just like when you're swirling the glass, lets the air combine with the wine to open up the flavors, so you get more and more flavors through. So what I want you to do is take your glass, whether it's red or white, stick it in your mouth, about half a mouthful, and give it a swirl around. So I'll demonstrate, and hopefully you're all doing it at home. So usually I would be spitting at that stage, but I don't need to drive, comes from at home. So hopefully a few of you have done that. Orla's is delish, great stuff. So give it a good swirl around. One thing you'll notice, the difference between just sipping a wine normally and giving it a big massive swirl like you're doing now is it might not be as pleasant whenever you're swirling it around, but the whole purpose is not for pleasure when we're doing this. It's just to test the wine to see whether it's balanced, as in it's really getting into all those areas to test the wine, whether there's fruit, acidity, and alcohol. So generally, whenever you give it a massive swirl around, the actual pleasure element is a lot less. So it's really just to assess it. Now, what you'll have done, if you're doing this at home, you might notice that certain elements stand out more than others. So the big one is usually acidity. So if you're doing this at home and you put the wine in and you've swirled it around, one thing you might get is this real tart kind of bite, almost like a lemon's been squeezed into your mouth, and that's the acidity. And if that sticks out too much, it's not a particularly good wine, because the winemaker's let too much acidity into the wine by his winemaking processes. Another thing you might find is that the alcohol, yeah, there's Maria Kavanagh, twice the alcohol feeling. Is that in your bloodstream or your mouth? Yeah, so it is definitely seems stronger. And so one person's noticed at the back there's a bit of a burn. So if you look at the label on your wine, you might see the alcohol level of like 13, 14, 15 creeping up a bit. And also, as Marissa said, seems stronger. The flavor really pops out, but as I say, you're not doing it to sort of enjoy the wine, you're assessing the wine. So again, stick in a few comments if you notice anything. Is there too much fruit? Is there more heat from the alcohol? Is there a lot of acidity? But that's basically what we're doing, and it's just trying to, you're just basically trying to, Emmett's got a huge hit of alcohol, well done Emmett. And Nori nearly choked, fantastic. But it's just an interesting way to basically assess a wine. So it's not very fair in a winemaker if you don't like a wine, and yet whenever you do this, you realize it's a good wine because it's balanced. So we all have our preferences, which are very, very subjective, but it's also important to be objective as well, to be fair on the winemaker. The other thing, so that's balance. So the other thing that a winemaker is trying to do is to have length of flavor in the wine. So that's called the length of a wine. And that's how long the flavor stays in your mouth. So if you have a badly made wine, it'll actually go in, you'll taste it, and what'll happen is that the flavor will disappear really quickly. So if you have a unscrupulous winemaker, what they'll do is they'll have, say, 10 acres of vineyard, and what they will do is they will plant as many vines in there as possible to make as much wine. So they'll chuck in as many vines as they can, they'll produce loads and loads of wine, but the flavor of the wine can only come from the actual soil. So if you intensively farm grapes, what happens is, yes, you'll get more grapes, you make more wine, but each individual grape will only be able to take a certain amount of flavor. So you might actually get a cheap wine from, for example, Aldi, and think it tastes great, but sometimes the flavor can just go like that there. So whenever you're swirling it around, give it another swirl around now, and whenever you're doing it, as well as assessing the balance of the wine, a good thing to do is to see how long does the flavor stay in your mouth. Yeah, it's a good question from Maria. From Maria there, you definitely don't do it every mouthful, okay? Unless you're into that kind of stuff. But it's just every so often. Generally at the start, if you just want to test the wine, I don't expect you to be in the window of the lemon tree doing this all night and giving it Dixie. So definitely just the once, just to test how good the wine is. So So yeah, it's just a once experience whenever you're trying to learn a wee bit more about wines. So hopefully whenever you've had it in your mouth, the length of the flavour there has been there for quite a while. So generally, if it's like 15 seconds plus, it's probably a pretty good wine. So the flavour in my wine here is still there, still there, still there. But with the cheaper wine, it could be like 5 seconds and in it goes, and it's away like Casper the Ghost. So just in the goes. Flavour's lovely, yum, it's gone. What do? Quickly reach for it again. Lovely, it's gone. And before you know it, you're on the floor. So it's really good. You know, with better wines, you'll tend to drink less wine. And if you drink a lot of wine all the time, it's not that you're a bad person. You're probably just drinking the wrong wine. So make sure you go to the counter. So that's the main things when you're looking at quality of wine. It's basically just giving it the Listerine treatment, giving it a big swirl around your mouth. Is it in balance? Is the fruit, the acidity, and the alcohol all in balance? So whenever it goes down, does it go down smooth, or does something stick out? Is it disjointed? Is it imbalanced? And then that's just a good way to check if it's kind of good or not. And I'm sure Maria and Emmett will be putting a video of them slurping after this video. So that would be nice to see. One thing, is there anybody there drinking red wine? I'll just check comments. Let me see. A few bottles are going to last forever. A few expletives, fair play to you. If you're on to the red wine, if anyone would like to comment in the comment section if they're on red wine, because they will have a fourth element. So white wine has 3 elements, and if you remember, acidity, fruit, alcohol. But with red wine, there is one more element that you'll be tasting, and that's tannin. Okay. Now, when I talk about tannin, I don't mean, you know, going down to the tannin beds and getting brown. Tannin is it's a natural preservative which is in grape skin, and it's also in like tea, black tea, and it's a natural preservative, and it's very drying in your mouth. So if you've ever had black tea, if you ever chewed on a grape, it's very dry and bitter and astringent. Now, with white wines, you don't get tannin, because when you're making white wines, what you do is you take the grape, either a red or a white grape, you squeeze the grapes, you get grape juice, you add yeast. The yeast eats the natural sugars within the wine, converts them into alcohol. So that's white wine. But with red wines, what we do is we take a red grape, we squeeze the grape, out comes clear juice, but then we add the grape skins back in, and we basically tumble them around like a washing machine, and the red pigment then comes out of the grape skins themselves. It's not the inside of the grape that's actually red. So it's a bit like a blueberry. If you cut a blueberry in half, it's not blue or purple all the way through. In the middle, it's clear, same as the grape. So the only way you get the colour in red wine is by putting the grape skin back in and basically tumbling it round so that it actually extracts the colour into the wine. Now, a side effect of that is the grape skins contain tannin, and they're very drying, and they add life to a wine because they're a natural preservative. The problem with tannins is whenever they're very young, they're very dry and astringent and quite bitter. But as the wine ages, air molecules basically get in through the cork, through the foil, and they go into the wine. And gradually over time, those little air molecules basically start pounding away at the tannin and softening them up. And they turn from being a very bitter and astringent thing into a very silky thing. So basically, when a wine ages, it's generally only red wine that you're looking to age, and it's because of the softening of those tannins through little air molecules pummeling away at the tannin and softening them up, and they become really silky and delicious. So that's why people aerate wines, and they open them up. They might open them just like that there, but the better thing to do is actually put it in a decanter, because the decanter opens up the surface area from basically that, which is the bottleneck, to that there, which is, you know, your big jug or decanter. Gives more surface area for the air molecules to come in and hit all the tannin. Now, the point I'm trying to get across here is if you've got red wine and you're swirling it around, you might notice that your mouth has become super dry and a bit astringent and not very pleasant. So that's tannin. So I'll give it a go here. So what you'll notice is like your teeth have now become really, really dry. Like it's quite puckering, and tannin's responsible for, if you've ever woken up after a big session of red wine with a Joker smile, that's tannin, because it's the pigment of the color of the tannin that gives you that Joker smile. It also makes your teeth feel rough and furry as if you haven't brushed them for about 3 weeks. And yeah, and it stains your teeth as well, again, making them look as if you haven't brushed your teeth for about 3 weeks. So generally it's a bad thing in youth, but as the wine ages, it's a good thing, makes it really silky, and it's a positive thing. But just to let you know, that's what tannin is, okay? So hopefully you're more aware as to what that is. Just check the comment section. Malbec delish, very good, very good. Okay, mouth feels chalky, that's a good one. Chalky is a great descriptive, and I will nick that one, Maria, you're very good. Quick question there from Emmett. How does a wine get corked, and is it too much air? So basically, the good thing about this is to explain, if you've ever been in a restaurant, you've probably got that awkward position where a waiter comes around and they pour the wine, and everyone gets all nervous and just giggles and go, yeah, it's lovely, thank you. They're not asking you whether you like the wine or not. It's kind of tough shit. You've ordered your wine, so like, they're not asking you whether you like it or not. You took that chance when you ordered the wine. They're just checking, is there a fault in the wine? So there's really, I suppose there's two main faults that you're looking for when a waiter is pouring wine and you're looking at it and he's looking at you and you're wondering what to say. So there's two faults you're looking for. The first one is if it is oxidized. So if the winemaker hasn't done his job right in sealing the bottles or sealing the wine tanks when he's making the wine, air can get in and spoil the wine and turn it into basically vinegar. So you've probably had a spoiled wine where it tastes like vinegar. So if you're in a restaurant and you taste the wine and it tastes like vinegar, then you want to send it back. And that's what you say to the waiter. You say, the wine's oxidized, give us another one, please. And that will sort you out. The other fault they're looking for is basically, is it corked? Just like Emmett says. So it's not too much air. That's basically when it's oxidized. But corked means basically, let me see if I have a cork. So here's a cork here. So corks are generally just plugged straight out of a cork tree. Portugal is responsible for, like, I don't know, 90% of the world's cork population. So they tend to have originated in Cork, in Portugal. But what happens is, inside some cork trees, you can get a bacteria, which is a very long name, which I'll not try to pronounce, but it's shortened to TCA, and that bacteria can actually go into the cork. Now, because you store wine on its side, the wine can touch the cork and the bacteria can get into the wine. And that bacteria basically gives it the smell of that corked smell. And if anyone's wondering what corked wines smell or taste like, if you know the smell of a big wet old dog, or say cardboard that's been wet and damp lying in a garage for months on end, it's that musty kind of smell, or maybe like a student accommodation or something like that. But it's just that kind of musty, moldy kind of smell and taste. So you've probably come across it before. So if you sniff it and it smells a bit kind of doggy, wet, cardboardy, then that's probably corked. And again, if you smell it, hand it back to the waiter and they'll exchange it for you. So that's basically what it means. Is tannin what gives you the mad hangover? No, that's 3 bottles of wine gives you the mad hangover. Trish Callahan, how long can wine be kept for if not finished in one sitting? I think the real question is, why are you not finishing it in one sitting? No, it can be kept for as long as you want to keep it. There's enough alcohol in there to fight away all the baddies. So basically the answer to that question is, if you can still drink it without gagging, it's probably fine. So just keep drinking it. Generally, keep it in the fridge, white or red. It's temperature that degrades the wine, not time. So well, time obviously, but temperature can really degrade it much faster. So even red wine, put it in the fridge, and that will preserve it a bit longer. So so basically, it's generally 3 to 7 days before it really degrades in terms of flavor. But don't worry about actual poisoning or anything like that, because it's never going to happen. So so yeah, it basically is as long as you can put up with it. Is it better to buy an older red wine? Does it taste better? It's only better to taste by an older red wine if there are 2 things. 1, if it's more expensive, and 2, it needs to be stored really well. The reason it needs to be more expensive is generally more expensive wines start off balanced, so that fruit, acidity and alcohol thing are all in the line. If they're all in the line when it starts, as they age, nothing's going to tend to take over and spoil the wine. But if it's a cheaper wine and say that the acidity is slightly higher than the fruit, over time that's only going to get worse, and that difference will get worse, and you'll end up not enjoying it when it's older compared to when it's younger. So make sure it's a good bottle, and also store it well. So if you're looking to understand how to store a wine, just basically keep it on its side. The reason you keep it on its side is so that the cork stays in contact with the wine. And whenever the wine stays in contact with the cork, the wine cork will swell, so that it won't let excess air in. So that's why you'll see all the wines in our shop stored on their side, basically to keep the wine cork moist so that it won't spoil with oxidation. So keep it on its side, keep it in somewhere dark, and keep it somewhere cool with a regular all-around temperature. So don't put it, the worst place you can put it is where everybody puts it, in the kitchen. Kitchen goes really cold at night, really hot during the day. So don't put it in the kitchen. Put it in a cupboard, or preferably in a wooden box somewhere, but somewhere dark, cool, and regular temperature. So not the kitchen, not the garage, not the roof space. Basically everywhere most people put it is generally the question. What wines are good to buy for gifts when you don't know the person's preference? Well, you come to the counter and you speak to me or one of my lovely staff. To be honest, you want to, if you don't go to the counter, I'm only joking. If you're looking for tend to go safe. If you really want to know, things like Argentinian Malbec are massive sellers. Our biggest seller is an Argentinian Malbec. Go for a soft Merlot. You tend not to go too wrong with that. Anything from the south of France is really good because it's cheap, and it's generally it's very well enjoyed by most people. And Montepulciano from Italy, red again. Montepulciano from the east coast of Italy is relatively good value, and it's very easy drinking. In terms of whites, there's a big dividing line between people who like Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. So I tend to then say neither. So buy something nice like Pecorino from Italy, which is a bit like Pinot Grigio but cheaper and better. So you've heard of Pecorino cheese, but Pecorino wine's really, really good. Or maybe even something like Viognier, which is quite nice. This type of thing here is becoming more and more popular. But generally, don't go too mad, don't go too heavy. Keep the alcohol levels slightly down. They're going crazy right now because of global warming. They're hitting 14.5, 15.5, which is not good. It just puts the older ones like myself up over to sleep. Hope that answered the question. If you like your red wine slightly warmer, what's the best way to heat it without impacting flavour? The answer to that is you can't really. With temperature wines, we all drink our red wines way too warm, and we drink our white wines too cold. Generally, they should be drinking between 10 and 18 degrees. 10 degrees for whites, which is a lot warmer than a fridge, and 18 degrees for reds, which is cooler than room temperature. Because room temperature was really designed around homes whenever there wasn't central heating. So we're all kind of hitting 22 degrees and stuff in our houses. Whereas back in the day, we just wore extra jumpers and the room temperature was 18. So most people drank red wine at 18 degrees, but now we're creeping up to 22. And the problem with that is that the flavors drop after 18 degrees. So I actually have now trained myself to drink cooler red wines, and believe it or not, the flavors pop out a lot better and they are nicer. It just takes a lot of time to get out of that habit of drinking warm wine. Like, we have customers who come in and tell me about putting wine in the microwave and all sorts of stuff. But I'm not there to tell you what you should and shouldn't do, but I'm just saying that as they warm up, the flavor does drop. So the main thing I would say, if you really do want it warmer, just do it in a way that's very, very slow. So what I would do is maybe wrap it in a tea towel and put it on a radiator. But I hate even saying that myself. But if you really must do it, tea towel, radiator, that'll probably help. What price range would you stick to when buying wine in a supermarket? Again, don't go to a supermarket. No, this does bring up an important point. Basically, in Ireland, we've got the highest rate of duty and VAT in Europe. So the problem with wine is that if you spend, say, $7.99 the wine, you're spending around about 50 cents on the wine itself, which is a bit scary because I wouldn't buy any drink for 50 cents when it's a 750 ml bottle. But the good news is every euro you spend above that $7.99, you're pretty much paying for wine, albeit knock off the VAT. but the proportion of the payment goes much more towards the wine. So it's called trading up. So go up a little bit more each time, and you're paying more and more for the wine and not for the fixed amount of duty. So I will be perfectly honest and say that you shouldn't really be spending less than about €11 on a bottle of wine in Ireland. It's a different story in Europe. You can pay €5 and get good wine. Because of the way the duty and VAT and excise, it's just, you just cannot get a good bottle of wine for less than €11. Now, you can still get a bottle of wine, but I'd be worried about what they're putting in because there's lots of additives and different things that will make it delicious. But I tend to not like any additives in any of my food, so wine included. So yeah, honestly, €11 is your starting point. So basically drink less and drink good quality. Maria, that's very good. Thank you very much. Yes, we keep a record of what people buy, but we don't publish it. Don't worry. So you'll always know what you got. Maria obviously wears lots of jumpers. Her apartment's Baltic, and that's why her red wine is lovely. Well done. Yeah, so I mean, we're probably running out of time soon. So I'll just finish off with one thing, and it's a little bit of a promotion from our side, but it's a warning sign of basically try and stay out of supermarkets. The reason why is this, okay? I'll end on a very quick story. So if you can imagine, we in Ireland had the growing conditions to be able to grow grapes to make wine. Now we don't because it's way too cold. And you need 180 days of sunshine to ripen a grape. And I don't think we have 180 days of sunshine every year to ripen a grape. But say we had the growing conditions in Ireland to grow wine or grape for wine. So we planted grapes in Letterkenny, and we did the same thing, say, in Ballybofey. Now, if we were to turn those grapes into wine, both wines would taste slightly different because there's a different elevation, different proximity to water, slightly different soil, slightly different altitude, and all those factors will lead to a slightly different wine. Now, if you go to a supermarket, you're buying wine that's not small vineyards. So you're buying wine because you don't supply one Tesco, you supply 300. So you need to be a big producer. But the problem with big producers is how do you maintain the same flavor profile from one bottle to another whenever you're selling 60 million bottles like Wolf Glass? Now, the problem with selling 60 million bottles is you cannot guarantee that it's going to taste the same. Well, I don't think you can anyway, and you can't just blend that away. And the reason why each one of those tastes the same, not just this year, but the following year when the growing conditions are completely changed, is I think because of different additives and preservatives you can put in them. And legally in Europe, you can put 60 different additives and preservatives in wine and not put it on the label, which is pretty scandalous. Despite the fact that every other food product in the world has to have every ingredient in it, wine doesn't. So every bottle of wine looks the same, even though they're completely different. And different additives and preservatives you can put in the wine range from things like mega purple, which is a dye that makes red wine more red. You've got acidifiers, deacidifiers. You have, as I say, colorants, things that change the body. Now, when you're dealing with small vineyards like we do at the counter, you're never going to get them in there. But whenever you're dealing with, massive wine corporations that supply, for example, Wolf Glass to 60 million bottles, I find it very hard to believe that there's no way that they can control and make each bottle uniform. So the one thing I would just say is that small producers, give them a go and you'll notice the difference the next morning. If you've ever had one glass of wine and had a sore head the next day, you're drinking the wrong wine. But anyway, that's just a little bit of a rant of mine. Is there any more questions? That's why you can get wine in Portugal for €3. Exactly. I totally agree with you. And again, it's just basically the way the excise duty and the taxes in Ireland. It's the highest taxed in Europe. So generally, as I say, drink a little bit less wine, but just drink better wine. And again, like the length of flavor will last longer. You'll drink less and you'll feel better the next day. So basically, we get wine from smaller vineyards. It's a bit like when you go on holiday. You're definitely not going to get those additives because you're dealing with small vineyards. So if you've ever been on holiday, drink the local wine. That's why you feel fresh in the morning. It's the same reason why you go to Germany and drink the beer and feel fresh, because they have the German purity laws. So again, we only deal with those type of winemakers who are small vineyards. They treat the wine with respect. They change every year. There's no colorants, additives, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, as I say, it's my rant. Good girl, Adele. I like it. And thanks very much, Mary. You're very good. I'm conscious of the time there. There's 42 minutes. I don't know how we're going, Emmett, or if there's any more questions. If I've missed any questions while I was chatting, please let me know. I don't think I have. Cool. But the most important thing is, like, don't be forced into thinking you should or shouldn't like anything. Wine's very subjective, just like we all like different foods. So just because you don't like a certain wine someone else likes, just call them out as a wine Nazi and just like tell them to clear off. You know, everyone has their own thing. Thanks very much, Rosemary. I agree with you. Very good. And then we'll work it all off, of course, with Emmett's videos. And as I say, fair play to Emmett. Speaking to a laptop for 45 minutes isn't too easy. Any more comments? Cool. That's brilliant. Thanks very much. Hope everyone has a good night. As I say, I'd love to see you down in the shop. We're going to be reopening hopefully on the 8th of June, but we are online for click and collect and nationwide delivery up until then. And thanks very much to Emmett for letting me chat rubbish for 40 minutes. And as I say, if you have any questions, just drop me a line at the counter on any of our social channels. And that's me. I'm off to finish these bad boys off with Olivia. Cheers. Small producers, give them a go and you'll notice the difference the next morning. If you've ever had one glass of wine and had a sore head the next day, you're drinking the wrong wine. But anyway, that's just a little bit of a rant of mine. Is there any more questions? That's why you can get wine in Portugal for €3. Exactly. I totally agree with you. And again, it's just basically the way the excise duty and the taxes in Ireland. It's the highest taxed in Europe. So generally, as I say, drink a little bit less wine, but just drink better wine. And again, like, the length of flavor will last longer. You'll drink less and you'll feel better the next day. So basically, we get wine from smaller vineyards. It's a bit like when you go on holiday. You're definitely not going to get those additives because you're dealing with small vineyards. So if you've ever been on holiday, drink the local wine. That's why you feel fresh in the morning. It's the same reason why you go to Germany and drink the beer and feel fresh, because they have the German purity laws. So again, we only deal with those type of winemakers who are small vineyards. They treat the wine with respect. They change every year. There's no colorants, additives, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, as I say, it's my rant. Good girl, Adele. I like it. And thanks very much, Mary. You're very good. I'm conscious of the time there. There's 42 minutes. I don't know how we're going, Emmett, or if there's any more questions. If I've missed any questions while I was chatting, please let me know. I don't think I have. Cool. But the most important thing is, like, don't be forced into thinking you should or shouldn't like anything. Wine's very subjective, just like we all like different foods. So just because you don't like a certain wine someone else likes, just call them out as a wine Nazi and just like tell them to clear off. You know, everyone has their own thing. Thanks very much, Rosemary. I agree with you. Very good. And then we'll work it all off, of course, with Emmett's videos. And as I say, fair play to Emmett. Speaking to a laptop for 45 minutes isn't too easy. Any more comments? Cool. That's brilliant. Thanks very much. Hope everyone has a good night. As I say, I'd love to see you down in the shop. We're going to be reopening hopefully on the 8th of June, but we are online for click and collect and nationwide delivery up until then. And thanks very much to Emmett for letting me chat rubbish for 40 minutes. And as I say, if you have any questions, just drop me a line at the counter on any of our social channels. And that's me. I'm off to finish these bad boys off with Olivia. Cheers.